Welcome to The Take, hosted by the Cowboy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Take. This is your host, the Cowboy, and thank you for tuning in, whether it's via iTunes or another podcast directory or service that you use. I sure do appreciate it. Make sure to follow me on Twitter at SportsCowboy, or you can follow the show at The Take Pod, P-O-D. You can follow both those accounts, and I'll try to make it entertaining. I can't promise anything. So, once again, thank you for tuning in. The name of this episode on The Take is America, the Face of Entitlement. Now, entitlement has become an issue in America, really a glaring issue, whether it's teenagers or whether it's adults. It seems to be becoming more and more prominent in the adult arena, which totally blows my mind. But we're going to talk a little bit about that, a little bit about entitlement, America, the face of entitlement. And what I've done, I've come up with a growth chart. Now, you know, when you have your first kid or your second kid, when they get old enough, they're walking, they can stand, you go buy a growth chart so you can measure their growth. That's what a growth chart's all about. So I've come up with an entitlement growth chart. And what that means is, how does the entitlement build and build and build as the kids get older and older and older up to adulthood? So I'll start with kids. Now, I'm not talking about, 1 and 2 year olds, because they are what they are. They do what they do. They're going to throw stuff. They're going to spit up on you. And, if you had kids, you know what I'm talking about. So let's start with kids. We all heard the phrase, little Johnny can do no wrong. Now, this is more about planting the seed in the parent's head. Maybe they just throw that phrase out there. But I think when you hear that, it plants that seed for later on when it comes time to discipline your kid, when it comes time to teach your kid something or have them learn from a negative experience. Little Johnny can do no wrong. Just a phrase I thought I would mention. Now, the number one thing with kids that I've seen is the prominence of quote-unquote timeout. I'm in my late 30s. The only timeout I knew of was in a football game or some kind of sporting event. Timeout, that had nothing to do with raising a child, with disciplining a child. So the prominence of timeout, I think, has contributed to this new growing sense of entitlement in America. Now, when your kid does something wrong, instead of going and getting that belt or getting that switch, now the only thing you can really do is send them the timeout. And I know I'm not going to get into the beating your kid, because that's not what I'm talking about. There's a difference between discipline and abusing a child. Maybe you've seen the news recently about Adrian Peterson, the Minnesota Vikings running back, and the abuse charge that he had with his son. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about discipline. There's a difference between discipline and abuse. And I think America and the media somewhat, now I'm in the media business, so maybe not that I'm partly to blame, but people in my field are to blame. Anything other than timeout is considered abuse, which is wrong. That's totally wrong, and it shouldn't be looked at that way. So you send your kid to timeout, you send them to their room where they probably have a TV, a PlayStation or Xbox. They can listen to music. So what kind of discipline is that really for your child? Basically what you're saying is, if you do wrong, I'm going to take you from this nice, comfy spot that you have here, and I'm going to send you to a more constricted, comfy spot, where instead of having to walk a distance or having to look for that remote, I'll send you to your room. It's a little bit smaller, but your remote's right there on the nightstand. You got your remote for your radio. You got your controller for your PS4 or your Xbox One. So it's right there. Don't worry about it. You won't even have to get out of bed. You won't even have to get out of that chair. That's how I'm disciplining you. Now, does that make any sense to you? It doesn't make any sense to me. So we've gone away from really disciplining our children, and therefore, in my opinion, adding to the entitlement we see in America. Something else having to do with kids and the entitlement growth chart would be participation trophies. Oh, God, don't get me started on participation trophies. Now, I played football for most of my life. Started when I was a wee tyke. Very little. Played all the way up through high school. Now, sure, in pee-wees and junior leagues and senior leagues, we got participation trophies. Everybody got a trophy at the end of the year. I didn't think anything about it. But now it's everywhere. No matter what you do, participation trophy. You go to the store, you don't have enough money, participation trophy. You go to a public restroom, participation trophy. And really, we've become a nation where we don't want to put the negative out there. We don't want to tell people how it is. We want to be positive. There's nothing wrong with being positive. But there are some points where you got to lay down the hammer. You've got to say, that was wrong, and this is your punishment. And I think with participation trophies, I think what you're telling the kids is, when you get to the workforce and you're part of a group, you're part of a working group, coworkers where you work hand in hand with each other, What you're telling them is no matter what you do, you can sit on the sideline, you can just sit in your cubicle, and don't put much effort into it. Don't collaborate with your teammates, with your coworkers. Let them do all the work, and you can still benefit. You can still get the praise, get all the positives that the team will get, but you did none of the work. That's how I see participation trophies. Now, I'm not saying that's the case for all kids. Some kids are just not as talented as others. But when it comes to putting in the work, putting in the hustle, the effort, I think that's where participation trophies really diminish the work put into being good at your craft. Whether your craft is baseball, football, hockey, or whether your craft is working at a major insurance company or technology company. So those are just a few of the topics on the entitlement growth chart for kids. Now, of course, as you progress, kids become teenagers, and then we have another set of issues when it comes to entitlement. I don't have teenagers, I have younger kids, but they're just a whole different deal. Hormones are everywhere. They have so much pressure in high school, junior high, whatever grade they might be in. There's just so much pressure to fit in, to make friends, to be popular, or just to be part of a group. So teenagers have so many issues to begin with, so it might not be fair to pick on them, but I think I have to. Do you know those parents that give their teenagers allowances? Sure, and that's commonplace. I mean, when I was a kid, I got a small allowance. Now, do you know those parents that give their children allowances, but they don't have to do any of the work? That's a different story. Now, maybe work is expected, but you know how it is. Sorry, Dad. I went over to my friend's house. We were working on a report. I wasn't able to wash those dishes. I wasn't able to take the garbage out. I wasn't able to come and mow the yard tonight. Hey, okay, I'll give them a pass. I'll still give you your allowance, but then it happens more and more often. And it becomes a pattern, but yet you're still giving that allowance. You're still enforcing that thought process that I can still get without giving. Entitlement. That's the definition of entitlement. I'm owed this, yet I don't have to work for it. So allowance without the work. Another issue when it comes to teenagers and how they might become entitled or already are entitled is when they expect the clothes, the video games on a regular basis, when they don't understand that that's an extra thing. I think as parents, we got to look at whether it's an allowance, whether it's taking them to the mall and buying them clothes on a regular basis. How regular is that basis? Is it weekly? Is it monthly? Is it quarterly? Is it random? As parents, we can get caught up in making sure that our kids like us. Not necessarily becoming the parent, but wanting to become more of the friend, of the best friend. And I've seen that so many times. Friends of mine, people I know, who are more interested in becoming their daughter's best friend or their son's best friend, that they lose sight of what the real job is. The real job is raising a kid. Now, if you're so interested in becoming your son or daughter's best friend, why not just let their actual best friend raise them? Have little Tommy or little Tina go over to the friend's house and stay for a month. Let them be the boss. Let them take care of them. Is that what you want? No, you don't want that. So when the kids start expecting regular gifts, they start expecting that every week getting some new clothes or every week getting a new video game. When it starts to become the norm for them, they lose sight of the fact that that's just extra. Or that's a reward for something they've done, for work they've done. So we got to make sure as parents that we don't fall into that trap. Now, I've talked about on the entitlement growth chart, kids, whether it's time out, helping lead to entitlement. And this builds. It's the little steps when they're kids. They carry that with them to when they become a teenager, and it builds and builds and builds to when they become an adult. And when you get adults, when you've had time out all your life, when you've had participation trophies all your life, you move up to teenager, you're getting that allowance, you're not having to put in the work. You're getting all these extra stuff, video games, clothes, gifts, and you're expecting that. That builds. Now you're an adult. And that's where I see the biggest problem is. It all starts when you're a kid, but with adults, the entitlement issue is really what will destroy America, among other things. But it is something that we need to pay attention to. When you look around, you know some friends, you know some people, you know some coworkers. When you think of entitlement, what are some of the examples you could just pull off the top of your head? Maybe you have that friend. I'm not going to say he's a stoner or she's a stoner, but not the best work ethic in the world. They lay in bed, they sleep till noon or 1 or 2, sometimes 3 p.m. They say they need to get a job, but they're not looking for one. I don't know about you, but the job man comes by my house about 3:30. He tells me all the jobs he has. I pay him, and then guess what? I'm making money. That's not how it happens. It's not how it happens for anyone. People get up, they go to work. Whether you have a blue-collar job or white-collar job, whether you went to college, went to vocational school, whatever route you went, you're out there, you're working. Getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, taking that first shift. Or maybe you run a multi-million-dollar company. You're up early. You're putting in the work. You're getting what's yours. You're earning what's yours. You're earning that salary. But there are a lot of adults out there, and I know them, and I know you know them, that they expect that job to come to them. They complain about not having a job, yet they're sleeping till 2 or 3 in the afternoon, expecting the big delivery truck of jobs to pull up, and there you go. I've got a job. Just doesn't happen that way. Also, you've seen it on the news. Workers with a minimum wage protest, a certain fast food restaurant, one of the biggest in the world, people wanting $15 per hour. For what? Now, I love a good burger and fries. I love some good chicken McNuggets. But $15 an hour, you're talking about the total devaluing of occupations out there. Basically, what you're saying is you can graduate high school, or you don't have to graduate high school. You can go get your GED, and you can come work for us, and we'll pay you more than a lot of Americans make. All you have to do is know how to run a cash register, don't steal from us, and know how to make a burger. And that's really a slap in the face to a lot of Americans. Now, I know people at those establishments, they work hard. I'm not saying they don't work hard. I'm not saying they don't deserve a raise. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying it's a slap in the face to expect a $15 minimum wage when a lot of Americans out there are working 3 times as hard as you are, yet they don't have that choice to protest and to demand that big of a raise. I mean, that's a huge raise. So minimum wage protest, that's another step on the entitlement growth chart. And here's the big one. Here's the one that gets me going. Entitlement programs. Usually federal programs. Let's just say what it is, welfare. With so many families, from cradle to grave, all they know is welfare. They grew up on welfare. They had kids, still on welfare. Their kids had kids, still on welfare. And when you think about it, it's genius. The families that partake in these entitlement programs, they're smart because they don't have to work. The government's taking care of everything. Why would you go out and work and make less money than what you can by sitting at the house and collecting a check from the government? What they're doing is smart, but what they're doing also is destroying this country, sucking the nation dry of its funds, of its work ethic. And welfare is not the only entitlement program. You have people taking advantage of the system all over the place. But something has to be done about this sense of entitlement in America. And as adults, we're using these entitlement programs way too much. They're becoming too much of a crutch for America, where we don't even know what hard work is anymore. We don't even know what a good day's work is. I think for most Americans, a good day's work is making it to the next level on Call of Duty, or going to the store and browsing around a little bit. It's a sad state in America. And here's just a few examples of what I'm talking about. Britt McHenry, I know you've probably seen the video via TMZ where she's degrading a worker at the tow truck company. Now, sure, the video's edited, so we don't know if the lady that worked for the tow truck company was provoking her in any way. But having done the research, this isn't the first time Britt McHenry has degraded someone. She's done it via Twitter. She's done it before, so this is not her first rodeo. She's calling the lady fat, telling her to lose some weight, making fun of her teeth, of her education, saying she has no skill set. And she told her that she worked in the news and that she would sue the blanking place. It's the classic, do you know who I am? And athletes are the worst at that. How many videos have you seen where the guy gets pulled over for drunk driving or in some kind of scuffle at a nightclub? The phrase, don't you know who I am, is used. And you think these guys will learn, but they never do. So Britt McHenry, professional athletes, just go to YouTube. You can find a ton of examples of don't you know who I am. So there you go. There's my entitlement growth chart. Just a few examples of what I think is adding to this entitlement issue we have in America. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back and talk about entitled. I've got a crazy story for you about entitlement with a capital E. You're listening to The Take. We'll be back in just a few. Welcome back to The Take. This is your host, The Cowboy. Follow me at Sports Cowboy or follow the show at The Take Pod, at The Take Pod, P-O-D. Now, I've got a story here that you'll really think's entertaining, straight out of Japan, and thank you for those who have downloaded my show in Japan. A surprise, but I do thank you. A Japanese woman allegedly attacked her husband with a kitchen knife because of the terrible smell he had left in the toilet, police and reports said Monday. Emi Mamiya, 29, was arrested on suspicion of attempted murder after apparently slashing her husband's face with a knife, police said. Mamiya was reportedly incensed by the smell left behind after her 34-year-old partner emerged from the bathroom. Reminds me of that scene in Friday. Her anger was further fueled when he tried to help their 3-year-old son use the toilet, quote-unquote, without washing his own hands first, she said. And since I do have some friends in Japan, I do have exclusive audio. Now, this audio is before Emi approaches her husband. Very fascinating. Take a listen. And to finish the story, Emi was quoted as saying, "The toilet stinks so much that the child cannot even use it." Hey-o! There you go. This has been The Take, hosted by the Cowboy. Tune in next time for more interesting topics. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you later.
This has been The Take. Follow Cowboy on Twitter @SportsCowboy. And stay tuned for more episodes.